This morning, a machine screamed at you until you woke up. You silenced it, and from that second, your day was already decided. Where you had to be, what you had to finish, how many hours belonged to someone else. And tonight, before you sleep, you'll set that same machine to scream at you again. Now, rewind 50,000 years. A man wakes up in the morning light with no alarm, no schedule, and nowhere he has to be. He owns a spear, 2 animal hides, and a fire. And he sits up, stretches, and asks himself a question you have never once been free enough to ask. What should I do today? Now, your brain is already fighting this. It's telling, ancient life was brutal, short, and desperate. Every second was survival. That's what everyone believed. For centuries, that was the official story. But the proof that it's wrong was lying buried in the ground the entire time. And when scientists finally dug it up, it flipped everything upside down. And that opens up a mystery. Because you live surrounded by machines built to save time, washing machines, dishwashers, microwaves, cars, every one of them was invented to give you more free hours. So, how does a man with none of that, no technology at all, end up with more free time than you? What did he actually do all day that you can't? And where did all of your time go? To answer that, we have to start in the ground, because somewhere in the Middle East, archaeologists are digging, and over the years, from the same region, they pull up to human skeletons. They lived a few thousand years apart. That's close enough to compare them, but far enough that they come from 2 completely different worlds. The first skeleton is tall. The bones are thick and strong. The teeth are worn but healthy. Almost no cavities. The joints are clean. This was a body that ate well, moved in varied ways, and never got ground down by one repeated motion. The second skeleton tells a harder story. The teeth are full of cavities. The spine shows arthritis, the specific damage you get from bending and grinding through the same motion thousands of times year after year, and this person died younger. So, which one is which? Take a guess? Most people point to the tall, healthy skeleton and say, that's the modern one. The farmer with tools and stored food and a roof over his head, and the short, broken one, that must be the caveman, the guy scraping by in the wild with a spear, but it's the opposite. The strong skeleton belonged to the hunter-gatherer. The wrecked one belonged to the farmer, the person from the era we call progress. And this isn't one weird pair of bones. Archaeologists have run this comparison at sites all over the world. And wherever farming replaced hunting and gathering, the same pattern shows up in the ground. Generations got shorter than the ones before them. Their teeth rotted, their spines wore down, and their lives ended earlier. Think about what that means. Your skeleton is a diary. It records how hard you worked, how well you ate, how your body was used. And it holds that record for thousands of years. And the diaries say that people with nothing but spears were living lives than the people who came after them with farms, storage, and villages. But bones can only tell you so much. They can prove the work was lighter. They can't show you how a normal day actually went. So, let me walk you through one. You wake up at dawn on your own because your body got the sleep it needed. The fire from last night is still burning in the middle of camp, and people are already sitting around it eating leftover meat and nuts, talking about where the water is good and where the animal tracks were spotted. That's the whole morning plan. And when it's decided by everyone. And today, nobody needs to hunt. The last hunt was 2 days ago, and there's still plenty of food. So, a few people go out to gather plants, and you spend the morning on your tools. You sharpen your spear, and you work a stiff hide until it turns soft. You do this because skill earns respect here, not because someone told you to. And by early afternoon, everything that needed doing is already done. 2 days later, the meat runs low, so today you hunt. And real hunting looks nothing like the movies. You never chase the animal because it's faster than you, and it always will be. Instead, you follow it at a steady walking pace for hours. Your body can sweat and cool itself while it moves. The animal can't, so it keeps sprinting, keeps overheating, and keeps getting weaker until it finally collapses and you walk up to it. You were never the fastest thing out there. You were the only thing that never has to stop. The hunt takes the whole day, and it's the hardest work this life asks of you. But one good hunt feeds the camp for days. So, tomorrow, the free time starts again. And at this point, you're probably thinking this sounds too good to be real. It sounds like a fantasy someone invented about the past. So, let's deal with that. Because one man had the exact same doubt, and he did something about it. In 1963, an anthropologist named Richard Lee walked into the Kalahari Desert on the edge of Botswana. It's one of the harshest places on Earth a human being can live. He went there to study the hoansi, one of the last groups still living the old way, hunting animals and gathering plants with no farms and no stores. Lee expected to find misery. That was the official story in every textbook. That life before farming meant working every daylight hour just to barely survive. But instead of assuming it, he decided to count it. He followed people around with a notebook and a stopwatch, and he recorded how they spent every single hour, day after day, for weeks. Lee came back with a number that nobody believed. These people were spending about 17 hours a week getting food, and that's not 17 hours a day. That's 17 hours across the entire week, which comes out to about 2.5 days of work. Every hour after that belonged to them. For comparison, you'll cross 17 hours of work by Wednesday afternoon. Now, maybe the hoansi were just one lucky group in one lucky spot. That's a fair doubt, and scientists had it too. So, they went and ran the same count on other groups still living the old way. They checked the Hadza in Tanzania, then the Ache in Paraguay, then the Martu in Australia. 3 groups on 3 different continents, and every single time, the answer came back between 15 and 20 hours a week. That was the full cost of staying alive. But here's the part nobody tells you. The most important hours in that whole week were not the hunting hours. They were the lazy-looking hours that came after, because those hours were doing a bigger job than food. It's afternoon and the camp has slowed down. People sit in the shade and talk. They play with the kids and they groom each other, picking through hair while the conversation drifts. Next to you, someone is drilling tiny holes through seashells to string into a necklace. Someone else is carving a design into a piece of bone, and that design has no purpose at all except to look good. And this isn't a guess about how they filled their time. At Blombos Cave in South Africa, archaeologists found shell beads that are over 70,000 years old. Small sea snail shells with holes carefully drilled through them, made to be worn. The coast was a long walk from where these people lived. So, someone made that trip, collected the shells, carried them home, and then sat for hours drilling holes with stone tools, just to make something beautiful. And in 2008, in a cave in Germany, researchers dug up a flute carved from a vulture's wing bone. It's 40,000 years old, and it has 5 finger holes spaced for actual musical notes. So, someone in the Ice Age understood music well enough to build an instrument, and someone had enough free time to learn to play it. But the beads and the flute point at something bigger, because this world has no money, no police, and no courts. So, ask yourself, what actually keeps you alive here when your hunt fails? Or when you get sick? Or when you break your leg and can't walk for a month? The answer is other people. That's the entire safety net. If people like you, they feed you when you have nothing. But if they don't like you, then nobody owes you anything and you starve. So all those lazy afternoon hours of talking and joking and grooming were actually an investment in the only insurance this world has. The anthropologist James Sussman found that hoansi adults spend around 6 hours every single day on pure social time, because in this world, your relationships are your bank account, your hospital, and your pension all at once. Then the sun goes down. And here's where it gets really interesting, because the best hours of the day haven't even started yet. In 2014, an anthropologist named Polly Wiesner published a study that might explain where human culture itself comes from. She had recordings of hoansi conversations collected across decades, and she sorted all of them by one simple thing. Was it said during the day or at night? The daytime talk turned out to be practical. People discussed where the animal tracks were, which plants were ready to gather, and who wasn't sharing fairly. It was basically logistics and gossip. But at night, around the fire, the talking changed completely. 81% of the firelight conversation turned into stories. People told myths about how the world began, tales of ancestors who did impossible things, and jokes that ran long into the dark. And notice what kind of stories these are. Gods and spirits, the past and the future. None of that comes out of a scared, hungry mind. Those stories only show up when your stomach is full and your body is safe. So, the fire was doing more than cooking food and keeping predators away. It created the first hours in human history where the mind was completely free. And Wiesner argued that this is exactly where culture was born. Not in the middle of the work, but in the quiet hours after it, and when the fire burned low, even sleep worked differently. Before artificial light existed, humans didn't sleep in one long block. Historical records and modern sleep experiments both show the same pattern. People slept about 4 hours, then woke up for an hour or two in the middle of the night, and they stayed calm in that darkness, thinking or talking quietly until sleep came back for another 4 hours. That quiet hour in the middle was completely normal for thousands of generations. Today, you wake up at 2 a.m. and call it insomnia. Your body might just be doing the oldest thing it knows. So, now you've seen the whole picture. Food took a few hours, people took the afternoon, stories took the night, and sleep came in to calm halves. That was the human schedule for hundreds of thousands of years. Then, about 10,000 years ago, somebody planted a seed, and that's the moment your time started disappearing. That happened in the Middle East. In a region called the Fertile Crescent, when humans started planting grain and keeping animals, instead of hunting and gathering, and on paper, farming sounds like a massive upgrade. You get more food, you get control, and you never have to follow an antelope for 6 hours again. But farming is a trap, and here's exactly how it snapped shut. Farming produces more food. More food means more babies survive, so the population grows. A bigger population needs more food, so you plant more fields. More fields means more work. And then the lock clicks. Once your group is too big to feed by hunting and gathering, the old life can't carry you anymore. You can never go back. You're in permanently. And so is every generation born after you. And the workload explodes. Now, there's plowing. planting, weeding, harvesting, storing, and guarding it all, season after season forever. And remember the second skeleton from the beginning, the one with the rotten teeth and the worn-out spine that died young. That skeleton is what this new life did to people. The first farmers worked harder and lived worse than the hunter-gatherers before them, and they couldn't leave, and the trap kept tightening. Big farming villages produced specialists, potters, toolmakers, weavers. Specialists needed trade, and trade built cities. Then cities brought soldiers, priests, and tax collectors, and eventually they brought a brand new idea in human history. For the first time ever, your hours could belong to someone else, sold off in exchange for food you no longer knew how to find on your own. So nobody stole your time in one dramatic night. It was traded away slowly, one generation at a time, in a deal that no one alive today ever got the chance to refuse. The alarm that screamed at you this morning is just the latest payment. For hundreds of thousands of years, humans worked 15 to 20 hours a week, and the skeletons in the ground prove it. The afternoons went into craft and beauty, and the relationships that kept everyone alive. The nights went into firelight stories, where culture itself was born, and sleep came in to calm halves. Then farming arrived, the population trap locked behind us, and step by step, our hours stopped being hours. Today, you'll spend about 90,000 hours of your life working. You make art only if there's anything left of you after your job. They made art in the middle of an ordinary afternoon. You network for career advantage. They spent 6 hours a day with people they loved, and it counted as survival. You chase success, savings, retirement, some finish line where you finally get your time back. They were already standing on that finish line. They were born on it. Every morning they woke up with no alarm and no schedule, and they asked themselves the one question you have never been free enough to ask. You are working your entire existence to someday retire into that life. They lived it from their first day to their last, and they would find it very strange that you traded it all away for a screaming alarm and a promise